Hi, my name's Shane Cutler. I just want to share a part of my life, or actually it is my life. When asked to do this, sometimes you jump into things and you say, yeah, it's okay, but when you come to put it all together, you get a bit nervous. So I'll probably start from the beginning. I was born in Penrith at the local hospital. My mother and father were Catholics, non-practicing. I have two younger sisters. The youngest is 4 years from me, and the one in the middle's 2 years. I suppose life was pretty good when you're a young fella. Life was always good. Growing up with cousins in around the St Mary's, Penrith area, and then at I think it was before 5, we moved into the inner city. My grandparents lived up the road. I remember I was always spoilt. My grandparents always thought the sun shone out of my private areas, but you know, they were good people. My grandfather was a butcher, and I always remember life was in that age group was always fun. It was always good. But when we moved to Moorebank, and as you get a bit older, you're looking for something, and sometimes you find people that I suppose are like-minded, who are young and are looking for something better to do. And I suppose that's where life seems to draw you. I suppose the thing was, I never remember my father ever telling me that he really loved me, and that was always hard. But my mum was always there, and she always would tell me. I suppose the greatest thing was that all through life, that's probably the thing that I probably missed the most was that my dad never told me. But the thing was, when you're looking for something, I suppose you look for it in other people. And as I said, we were raised Catholics, and I suppose my mother would give us money to, or she'd give me the money. We'd go off to church. She'd put us we'd get on the bus and we'd have the money for the plate. And I remember when we got to the church, I'd send my sisters into the church, which was in Liverpool, and Westfields was across the road, so I'd give them a couple of cents each, and I'd take my money and I'd be off into to Westfields to spend the money on a Sunday morning. Then I'd come back and pick my sisters up. And this went on for quite a while, until one day my mother was talking to somebody and saying how I was such a good son that I took my sisters to church, and then one of my sisters piped up and said, you know, Shane doesn't come to church with us, he just goes over to Westfields, and then he picks us back up again. So from that day forward, we never went back to church. Neither of my sisters actually went to church after that, and I never went to church really on a regular basis either. Raised sent to school at a Catholic school, Patrician Brothers, and my sisters were then sent off to public education, because my parents always thought that the boy needed the best in education, so I was sent off to a private school. And I suppose the thing was there that even there, in amongst a whole group of people, I never really made a lot of friends. I had close associates at school, but I never remember ever having anybody around at my place or going to anybody's place on the weekend. It was mainly just spent at home. But as I got older, I got to meet a group of fellows outside of school who were a lot older than myself. When I was 14, they would have been 18. So it was a whole totally different sort of atmosphere. And it started off good in the beginning as well. We were just young people always looking out for a good time, drinking, girls, driving around in stolen cars. It was, when you look back on it, you see it in a different light, but back then it just seemed to be normal. I had a mate who worked in the bottle shop, and I remember we'd go around there, and $20 was a lot of money back then. It was really half of my week's wages. I used to get paid $40. And we'd give him 20, and we'd fill up 2 boots full, and he'd give us $50 change. So we had a fairly good weekend, nearly every weekend until he got caught. But I suppose life just seems to change as you get older. Things that you thought were normal don't become normal anymore, and you're always looking for that extra edge in which to do things. I suppose as you get older too, the challenges that you see in life aren't really as challenging. So, as I said, you always go for that extra edge. I suppose the things that I remember is the drinking, the smoking of drugs. It was something new. But I was probably lucky in a way that I never got caught by police or anything like that. A lot of my friends were always in trouble with the police. But I always seemed to manage to escape it, and I never knew why, but it never seemed to come too close to me. When others were getting caught, I was either never there, or I would be fast enough to run so that I'd be out of sight before anybody knew what was going on. But I remember certain things that happened which make me look back now, and you really start to wonder who your friends were. And I remember when I was about 17, a friend of mine, he had a girlfriend up at Newcastle, and I remember even back then that we were supposed to go up there for holidays, and he didn't want to go, so I thought, well, still had to take the opportunity. I wanted to get away, so I went up there and stayed at her parents' place. And I remember about 3 or 4 days later that got a phone call, and this friend wanted to meet us in Newcastle. And the reason why he wanted to meet us was he'd spread a rumour that I had taken his girlfriend away, and these friends that I thought were so-called friends had come up to, I suppose, to give me a bit of a hiding. I remember one bloke had a knife, and I look back and, these were so-called friends, but, rumours start, and before you know it, your whole life just seems to be flashing before your eyes. And I wonder, when looking back, would this bloke have stabbed me? And I'd say, yeah, he would have, because it wasn't too long after that he helped murder a fella, and they chopped his body up with a chainsaw and an axe and took the parts out along Heathcote Road and got rid of it. So would he have done it? Yeah, I suppose he would have. So when I look back, the people that you begin to trust, they're really not there to trust at all. I suppose another thing that really changed my life too was the sister after me had a girlfriend. I remember all the way through when we were little. That I say little because we were probably only 12. And that this girl, I always had a liking for her, but could never ever tell her. And it wasn't until I was about 18, and we were at a party, and she'd broken up with this fella, and we were talking, and I had to take her from this party to take her back home to pick something up. And I don't know what it was, but on this night, as we drove back to pick something up, I let her know exactly how I felt about her. And to my surprise, she said exactly the same thing, that, she really liked me as well. But what she wanted to do was to give this fella one more chance, and if it didn't work out, then we would go out together. And I remember being very happy as we went back to the party, and as the party started to draw to a close, I remember she walked up to me and said, "Look, I think this other fella and me we're going to give it one more chance." I said, "Oh, that sounds really good, And if it doesn't work out, maybe you and me can get together." And that really, really made me feel good. But the thing was, that night as we all left, and this fella was driving her to another friend's place, and we were following probably about five minutes apart. And I remember travelling down Elizabeth Drive just as you get towards I think what used to be there was a horse establishment where you could ride horses. I forget what the name of the place is now. But as we come over the rise, there was this bloke who she was going out with. I can still remember him running up Elizabeth Drive towards my car, and as I slammed on the brakes, there was about 3 or 4 other blokes in the car with me. And as he came up to the driver's side, he told us that he'd hit a horse, and that the car had rolled a number of times into a paddock. And as we drove down, I remember seeing the horse, its front leg had been taken right off. And as we parked the car and went over to the rolled up car in the bush, I remember seeing her in the passenger side, just with her head on her chest. And no marks, nothing. And she died that night. It was, I suppose that changed my life for a long, long time. It wasn't long after that I left this group of people, and I decided to just change my whole outlook on life. I suppose I was angry with God too, because an opportunity had come up, and in the space of hours it was taken away. So you really begin to wonder, really, is there a God or isn't there a God? You go to church in the early days, and people tell you how great God is, and then in a matter of hours, things happen that change your whole life. And I remember from that day forward, I had a whole totally different outlook on how I treated people, how I looked at people, how I treated myself. Because now I was more or less on a path where I needed to get some sort of satisfaction. And I suppose going to clubs, getting more heavily into drinking. The poker machines was a great outlet. That's the sort of path that my life was now starting to take. And I remember that on most evenings, except for one night I think, I would be at various clubs around the western suburbs of Sydney. The only night that I wouldn't be drinking would be a Tuesday night, and that'd be because I'd go to somebody else's place just to sit down and probably recuperate, because it was a pretty hectic sort of lifestyle. But never once would I miss a day's work, because I always remember my father saying, you never miss a day's work because you've been drinking. So I'd drink till 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning back then, and you get up and you'd go to work. It wasn't 24-hour trading. We just, you'd go and make sure you had what you needed early, and that would last you all the way through. But I suppose that when I look back, I always thought that life was pretty good. It was fun. It was always something there, but I could never really talk to people. I always found it hard to talk. And unless if I went to a party or somewhere, I'd have to get at least 3 or 4 drinks into me before I could start to loosen up. But then by the end of the night, I was that drunk. I suppose that it didn't matter what I said, because it didn't make any sense anyway. But as I go through these stages, I remember I didn't have much respect for women either. That was probably the thing as well that came out of this accident, was that I didn't have a lot of respect for myself, so I found it hard to respect the emotions of other people. At work, as I worked in a bank, I worked my way up, but I had a bit of a temper as well. And all the way through work, even though I had people that would drink with me, there was always a thing that at work, I suppose people were a lot more scared of me and would do things only because they were scared of what I would do to them, and not because of any authority that I had. Because I had a reputation of just grabbing people. It wouldn't work these days. But I remember I had a bloke once, held him up against the brick wall in the office, and his toes weren't even touching the ground. And all I had him was by the throat on the wall, and the look in his eyes was something I'll never forget, because he was petrified. And even then, I still don't realise what I was doing, because it's just the way I began to handle things. I never wanted to be like my father. My father had not a real violent temper, but he had a temper. He always told me basically how useless I was. So things were a lot different, I suppose. And that's the way I didn't want to turn out like that, but that's the way I ended up turning out. When I look back through work, it was a totally different thing to what it is now. I went to work, and if we did any work, we were very lucky. Most of it was spent drinking during lunchtime and then after work. And any chance you could get, whether any public holiday, Melbourne Cup Day, before Christmas, you wouldn't be seen in the office for quids, because you just needed what we called relaxation, and that was the way that I looked at handling life. But I remember that all the way through life, that things would happen to me, and I always wonder why I'd be spared for something. Somebody would have a crash, and I should have been in the car, and I wasn't there. I remember as a kid when we went swimming at school that I nearly drowned out at Audley, and as I was going under, I remember thinking, gee whiz, I'm not going to come back up, because I wasn't a good swimmer. And as I went down, I think for about the last time, I remember a hand coming down through the water and pulling me up. And it was an older an older classmate who had seen me struggling and had swum out and pulled me out of the water. And even then, I think back, gee whiz, I must have just been lucky at that time. So all the way through life, all these little things would happen, and I never really fully understood them. I was lucky to have met my wife, Julie, when I got transferred to a bank in Fairfield. We're in Spencer Streets. And I remember when I knocked on the front door to start my day there, the first day in the branch, I remember seeing her walk behind the teller's boxes. And I tell her this all the time, but from the moment I saw her, I knew that she'd be the one that I'd like to take out. And it was a very short sort of courtship, I suppose, but back then it was you didn't go through these long sort of engagements, and I think we were engaged for 12 months. We'd only been going out for maybe 6 months or so before we decided to get engaged. So even then, I suppose I was a little bit different. Life would seem to be going in a great direction. We'd bought a house because out at Cambridge Park, and we'd have friends over, and it was nice. It was just the two of us, and not too many great hassles. But we had kids. They would come along, and they were always a blessing as well. But I suppose as my kids, as they grew up, I suppose what they saw was a different side of me to what other people saw. And I would rant and rave. I'd drink a fair bit. I remember most of the time I'd drink with a neighbour next door, whether it be home brew. And most of the time we'd be bottling this stuff and it wouldn't even be ready and I'd be drinking it. So life, even then I thought life was good. But as I look back, it wasn't good. It was good for me because basically I don't remember my kids at all from the time they were little till the time they were teenagers. Just bits and pieces. Because as the kids come along, I saw a desire that I need to work more. So I got second jobs. But we never seemed to get too far ahead because I'd either spend the money on grog or gamble it away. So we never got too far at all. But I remember, I look back and the thing I probably regret most is that I was really never there for my kids, especially my son. And I suppose I mirrored my father in his life as well, where just about all the way through I never really told him how much he meant to me, or I never told my kids at all, basically, how much they meant to me. I suppose the greatest thing that in their life was, and they remember, is their dad, he'd throw up in the car after a party with the window up. Dad'd have to clean out the car the next morning. Or Dad would be asleep on the bathroom floor because he'd been thrown up in the toilet. So life was I look back and it wasn't that good. And even when I talk to my kids, they're the things that they bring up. And I remember two things even in my son's life where a neighbour had come down and said that my son had been throwing rocks at his car, and when I asked my son, he was only, I think he might have been about 5 or 6. And when I asked him, he said, "No, Dad, I haven't been doing that." And I told this fella, and anyway, he walked away, and he came back about half an hour later with a witness. And I remember getting my son, and back then I used to wear steel cap boots. And I remember I took him out and I marched him up to this bloke's place, and about every 5 or 6 steps I kicked him like a football, and he would fly through the air, and I'd drag him back up again and march him up to this bloke's place to apologise. And I don't know whether really it was because I'd been made a fool of or for the damage that he'd done, but I suppose it was because I felt differently. I took it personally. I remember another time when we moved to where we are now, I'd come home and my son and his mate had broken into his bedroom, and nearly exactly the same thing happened again. I went up to find him. I found him at his mate's place, and once again I did exactly the same thing again. And then when I got him inside the house, I thought I was going to kill him. And you look back and you wonder, where does all this anger and that come from? Where did it come from? And I could never really handle it. And the easiest way for me to ever handle things was to always either cause a fight, so it gave me an excuse to go up to the club, because on Friday nights, in the early times, I'd spend it at home and have drinks at home, and then I'd start to go to the club, and then I wouldn't come home at all on some Friday nights. And then my wife, Julie, would get up on a Saturday morning and take the kids off to church, and I'd look at that as another opportunity to go to the local club, and I'd try and get all my work done. I'd mow half an acre in a very short space of time, running, get gardening done, and I'd be the first person to be at the club door. And I remember as a kid, I'd asked my father, when we lived in inner city Glebe, we had a hotel up the road, and I always remember asking him, we'd walk up the road and I'd say, "How come those people are standing outside the front of the pub?" He said, "Because they're drunks and they're waiting for the pub to open so they can get in and have a beer." I thought, oh, gee whiz, how could they be doing that? That'd never be me. But that was me every Saturday morning. And the club would open at 10 o'clock, and if the club wasn't open at 1 minute past 10, I'd be bashing on that door for them to let me in. And even then, I could never really see what I was doing to myself. And I remember I had a cousin, and he said to me, "Do you come up to this club often?" I said, "Oh, no, it's rare that I'm here." And as we walked through the door, he asked me what did I drink, and I told him what to get me. When he went to the bar, he asked for the order, and the lady gave him 1 beer. And he said, "No, I ordered 2 beers. She said, yeah, Shane's is sitting right there. I poured it as soon as he walked in." So even then I was caught out, so you think that life is heading in one direction, but really it seems to be stagnating and falling apart. But all through this, unbeknownst to me, my wife would be at church and she'd be praying for me, and she had a group of friends that would be praying for me. And I remember one night I said to her, I woke up and I said, "God's got a plan for me." And that was probably 15, 18 years ago. And I never really fully understood what it was then, because it really didn't make a lot of sense to me. But I remember that I got to a point where my whole life just seemed to be falling apart. and I couldn't handle work, and even at work they sent me off to a psychologist, the bank psychologist, to talk through some issues. My father had passed away. He'd had a heart attack, and as I said, I remember that my father never told me that he loved me, but when I was 29 I had a major heart attack, and it nearly killed me, and didn't change my life, but it nearly killed me. Didn't stop me from drinking, didn't stop me from smoking. Probably for about 3 to 4 months it did, but it really didn't change me a great deal. And I remember after my father had passed away that my mother had told me that when I was in hospital from that heart attack, that my father got down on his knees and he prayed to God that if God would save my life, that God could take his life. And I think it was within 12 months, my father had a massive heart attack and died. So that had, I suppose, even a bigger bearing on my life, because the weekend that he died, I was supposed to go down and see him, or the weekend before. He died on a Monday, and I was supposed to go down and see him on a Sunday. And I changed it because Penrith was playing Balmain at Penrith Park. So I made up some excuse not to go down and see him. I went to the football instead, had a few drinks. The game was crap. But that was my opportunity to spend some time with him. And I chose not to. So as all these things started to mount, I started to fall apart inside, I suppose. Still having not dealt with the death of the young girl in the car crash, and all these things were starting to come to a head. And I remember as they sent me off to the psychologist, he spent 1 day, 1 hour with me. Nothing happened. He sent me away. Next week, he'd spend another hour with me. Nothing happened. About the 3rd week, he probably started to make a little bit of a breakthrough. Then the 4th week, I went back there. I don't know what he said, but I just opened up and I called my father every single name I could put my tongue to, because he died and left me. And how this girl had left me as well. But here I'd been married now for quite a number of years and had kids, but the things of the past were having a greater effect on me than what I really knew. I had a loving wife, I had loving kids, but really I don't think I even knew them. I never let people get too close to me. And I suppose that's why it's hard to do this, because it's once you let it out there, it's out there. You can't take it back. So I remember as one morning, my wife and kids had gone off to church, and I remember I was in the shower and I fell on my knees. I couldn't take it no more. And I asked God to, if he was real, that he'd change my life. I didn't know what to do. I had nothing else to turn to, nobody else to turn to. My mother just before that had passed away with cancer, and I'd spent 12 months just about looking after her. And even in that, she was dying of cancer, and all the way through, she never complained. She always saw the best in people. And even if she saw somebody who was sick on TV, she was always better off than they were. And here she was, this frail person, riddled with cancer. And even that started to change my view of things. And even then I remember that the only person who would come and visit my mother for any sort of spiritual guidance was a Seventh-day Adventist minister who my wife knew. And I remember my aunts had gone up to the local parish priest in where we lived, and they'd asked him to come down to see my mother. And the first thing he asked was, "Does she come to my church?" And when they said no, he just slammed the door in their face. So the only fellow that would come was somebody who didn't know us from a bar of soap. And he came and he would spend time with my mother once, sometimes twice a week. And he helped her through it. But even after that, as I said, my life was really falling apart. And it wasn't until I fell on my knees in the shower that I really needed to change my life. And I remember that I started to go to church with my wife and kids, and I forget which one of my kids was learning to drive. So I had a chance to sit in the back of the car. I never really opened the Bible much, but I would open it. I opened it up and I started to read a verse out of the Bible, and we got to church that Sabbath, and the minister who was taking the sermon at the time, he would open his Bible and he said, "We're going to read from, we'll say Mark 3 verse 4. And that happened to be the verse that I'd read coming down to church. So next week, get ready again, hopped in the back of the car and opened the Bible again, and I started reading and closed the Bible. It didn't make a lot of sense, and once again the minister would get up and he'd start to read, and he'd say, "We're going to read from whatever verse it was," and once again it was exactly the same verse that I'd read in the back of the car. And I thought, gee, this is a bit uncanny. And so I thought to myself, Lord, if it happens 3 times in a row, I'll ask to be baptised. And once again, you've got to be careful what you ask for, because the next week I thought, this time I'm going to read something so obscure that I would think would be obscure, that if the person read from this verse, I'd know what it meant. And this time they didn't open with that verse, but just about in the middle of the sermon, the fellow read this verse, and I remember getting up after the sermon, and as I walked down towards the door to go out, the head elder was at the door, and I shook his hand. I just said, "I want to be baptised," and arrangements were made from there. But it really didn't mean that my life had changed a great deal. It just meant that it was going on another path, I suppose. And I remember that as I studied and as I went through things, things started to change a bit. I used to gamble a fair bit, and I always had money for gambling. I always used to think I was pretty lucky. I had the Midas touch whenever it came to poker machines or horses. I'd had a little stash put away, and I remember the closer I got to God, the more that stash that I had went down and down until there was nothing left. And even after the day I got baptised, I remember somebody saying to me, "From this day forward, your life will be full of trials, but God will sustain you." I never really meant what that was until I started to go through things. A car would break down, and we'd start to run out of money, and things would happen here and things would happen there. And went from having money all the time to having no money at all. But life seemed to be better, but I don't think I'd really grasped who God was even then. And I struggled every day to really find out who God was. But I know that when I look back through life, that He was there every step of the way. Regardless of where I was, He was there. And it's only as I've really started to understand who God is and the love that He has for me that has made a change in my life. It's made a change in the way that I see myself. It's made a change in the way that I see others. And I think now that people see me differently for some reason. I can never put a finger on it, but it can only be God that has done it. Because I've gone from somebody who would drink and smoke and gamble, and I haven't drank or smoked, but gambling was probably one of my biggest things, and I'd fallen back on a handful of times since I was baptised. And but the more I come to understand God, the more I know that I need to rely on Him, because I can't do anything now in my own. I tried to do it all by myself. I was always raised that you need to do it for yourself. Nobody else is going to help you. So I always took that on board, and it was always hard to put my trust in anybody, especially in somebody that I can't see. But all through life, as I said, I've looked back, and He's been there for me every step of the way. Sometimes He may have had to wait on the outside of a building because the building wasn't where He would have been for me to come out, but I should have drowned, and I didn't. I should have been stabbed, and I wasn't. I could have ended up with a police record. I never did. There are so many things that could have happened to me. But I ended up with a clean record. I ended up with a terrific family. And I ended up knowing who God is, who Jesus is. And that's made a difference in the way I see things now. And even now, I don't say that I've got it right. And I still struggle every day. But the battles that I go through now are really minute in comparison to the way that I used to go through battles before. So I know that can only come from God, and that can only come from understanding who Jesus is. I know that as I went through life, I've had an effect on some people who are still out there doing the things that I did. And when I look back at it, I've put them there. It's something that I pray to God that He'll either use me or somebody else to change. because if I can have that much of an effect on people, or Satan can have that much of an effect on people through me, I now look at it that God can have a greater effect on people if he uses me as well. So I've had to learn to surrender myself. I've had to learn to give up of myself. And a lot of things I've learnt through my wife, who had the patience and had the faith in a God that could change a husband that was so far going in the opposite direction, that now we walk the same path together. I suppose the thing is too that even though we're on this path, our kids are not with us at this stage because they're out of the church. So that's something that I give to God in prayer, because I know that through prayer, my wife's prayers were answered, and God never gave up on me. So through prayer, I know that God will never give up on my kids either, or my grandchildren now. So that's what I hold on to. I have to hold on to the promises that God has placed before me in the Bible, because I've tried the other way and it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. And I feel a lot more at peace. And just in one instance, when I remember just before I got baptised that there was this thing had been eating me that was, as I said, the death of this girl. And I remember that I never really, I can't remember going to the funeral, whether I did or I didn't. I just can't remember. It seems to be a blank. And she was cremated, and her remains are in Pine Grove Cemetery. And I remember that I would go out there and I would try and find where it was, and I could never find where her little plaque was in the cemetery. And I'd go to the office. I must have been there 2 or 3 times over a period, and they'd give me a map, and this is the garden that's in, and I could never find it. So I remember before I got baptised, I said to God, look, there's something that I need to put behind me, but I need to find where Annette was laid to rest. So I drove out to Pine Grove. I got out of my car and I walked directly to the garden, and I looked down and there was the plaque. So God had answered my prayer. I was able to put, I suppose it was 20 odd years of pain behind me, and I left it at that garden. Since then, I haven't been able to find it since. I've been back for 2 funerals. I've never been able to walk up to it since. I don't have to look for it now, because it doesn't really have that effect on me. But I would have, sometimes I think, is it there or isn't it there? But really it doesn't matter, because God answered my prayer, and that day my life took a new turn. It's been changing and evolving ever since. I look forward to the day that Jesus comes to take me home, take my wife and my kids and my grandchildren, because all this world is full of his pain and hurt. there's really not a great deal in it. We think that we have what it takes. We look to the things of this world, and I've had it all. I've tried it all. And I've done a lot of things which I'm not proud of. But when I look back, I've gained more knowledge of myself and of what is happening in the world in the last few years than what I gained in a lifetime. So God can make a difference. All I had to do was reach out and He would take my hand. But it took me 42 years to find that out. It was a long time. But one day I'm going home. And nothing's going to stop me.